I'm honored to be the president of this chapter. I'm wearing a jacket, so I look kind of official, but I'm also wearing my hat because I haven't had a haircut in 2 months. I want to thank LAI and her staff at Traceries for lending us this Zoom account, and also thank Executive Director Lisa Rother for setting this up and organizing and coordinating. We anticipate that the May luncheon will also be virtual. We have scheduled Beverly Swain Staley to talk about Union Station, although we haven't confirmed that she's willing to do it virtually, so we'll reserve on that. Normally we would go around the room and introduce guests, but I don't think we can really do that right now. I'm going to introduce the speakers. I think they have about a 35-minute presentation, I believe. And then we will have Q&A, but the way we're going to do Q&A is that we're going to do it through the chat feature on Zoom. So you will be able to type in your questions to chat, and then Lisa Rother will repeat the questions to the speakers. So without further ado, we are delighted to have Gwen Wright, the Director of Montgomery County Planning. We have Tanya Stern, Deputy Director of Montgomery County Planning. We have Carrie McCarthy, Co-Project Manager and Chief Research and Special Projects Division for Montgomery County Planning, and Khalid Afzal, who is the Co-Project Manager for Thrive Montgomery. And I will turn it over to our speakers, and thank you so much for being here.
Great. We are thrilled to be here. I am a lapsed member of Lambda Alpha, so I know what you work on, and I know you do a lot of great presentations, and I'm so pleased that you've asked us to be your presenters for this month. We do have a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to ask Lisa Rother to pull that up. And we have this organized so that each of us will be talking about some specific portions of that PowerPoint. I will just say that Thrive Montgomery 2050 is our update to the Montgomery County General Plan. That general plan has not been fully updated in over 50 years. There was a, what it was called a refinement in 1993, but it's not been fully updated in quite a long time. And clearly Montgomery County has changed dramatically over the last 50+ years. We're facing challenges, both ones that we suspected and new surprises like COVID-19 that we did not suspect. And we are really challenged to think about our future. What I've said many times in presentations is Montgomery County has been successful in lots of ways. We really have a great county, great place to live, great place to work, great parks, great schools. But what's really essential is that we don't just rest on those past successes, that we have to think about the future. We have to think about the issues and challenges that we're going to be addressing and needing to address. And we have to think about new and creative ways to address them. If we're going to not just continue to move along at the pace that we've had, but rather move into the 21st century and be able to really thrive as a community. So the name of the plan, Thrive Montgomery, is actually very meaningful to me. It's really about not just accepting the status quo and going above and beyond to create a really thriving 21st century community. I don't see the PowerPoint yet. Is it?
Oh, you ready for it?
Yep,
okay.
Yep. If you could pull up the PowerPoint, that would be great. Thanks. And so I'll just say next slide because I think Lisa's controlling the PowerPoint. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So what we're going to be doing in today's presentation is an introduction to our plan. where we are, what we've seen as major trends, what we've seen as major issues and challenges, the strategic framework of the plan, where we are now in terms of developing our vision and key concepts, and how we're going to move forward looking at policies and actions and implementation. And then we absolutely want to take questions and comments at the end. Next slide, please. So again, I want to just go briefly through a history of our general plan. Our general plan has gotten a lot of positive feedback over the years. A couple of years ago at APA, we won a landmark award for the wedges and corridors concept and the whole concept of the agricultural reserve and the transfer of development rights program. But it has actually a long history. In 1958, there was an initial general plan for the Maryland Regional District. And the Regional District, as you can see on that image, included parts of Montgomery County and Prince George's County, but did not include all of Montgomery County. It primarily focused on the Down County area that you can see in blue on the cover of that plan. In 1961, the council governments did a plan for the year 2000. And that really is what built on this idea of what we call the STAR plan that you see in the lower set, second from the left, which was really part of an overall COG concept of Washington, D.C. as the hub of the wheel and these spokes going out into different counties surrounding Washington with a series of corridor cities along that spoke. As you can see in Montgomery County, there was one corridor city identified, which was the I-270 corridor, with corridor cities such as Rockville, Gaithersburg, Germantown, Clarksburg, moving along that corridor. In 1964, we published, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning published the general plan, the one that's well known on wedges and corridors. And again, it's gotten a lot of positive response. It's been viewed by some as one of the most significant long-range plans of the past 50 years. That was at the time when it was actually adopted. And it did set out really quite, for the time, provocative vision of what we today, I think, would call smart growth, of creating opportunities for development along corridors of transportation. It even addressed the potential for future transit. It talked about, creating the Ag Reserve, again, a very forward-thinking idea, and it has stood the test of time. In 1969, the work was done to actually put a lot of the zoning that had been recommended in the more broad and general plan from 64 to put that zoning into place. So it was the sort of comprehensive update and comprehensive zoning. In the 90s, we did a limited amendment that really focused on goals and objectives. And although it maintained the basic goals and objectives, as you can see from the image on the lower right, it still focused very much on one corridor, I-270. It really focused on a good portion of the county being suburban in what they sort of considered suburban wedges. It did have the inside the beltway sort of core area, but it was still very much a plan that talked about that core area, the one corridor, I-270, and then the vast majority of the rest of the county remaining pretty suburban. Next. One of the things I think that's important and that I talk to our staff about, I talk to our planning board, and I talk to our county council a lot about is what to expect out of the Thrive Montgomery 2050 update. Updating the general plan is not going to change things overnight. It sets the policy, the vision and the goals and the policies that will help the county evolve over the next 30 years. So for example, when we did the 1960s general plan, it talked about very important goals such as increasing affordable housing, protecting farmland, and providing timely infrastructure. But it really wasn't until the 70s and even into the 80s that those goals, those policies became actual government programs and actions. The idea of increasing affordable housing became our moderately priced dwelling unit program in the early 1970s. Protecting farmland became our TDR program in about 1980. Providing timely infrastructure became our adequate public facilities ordinance in the 1970s. So what our work today on the general plan is going to do is it's going to set the work program for our planning department for the next 30 years. It's going to lay out the big picture goals, the big picture policies, and then we are going to work to implement those. And if we're successful, anywhere near as successful as the plan was in the 1960s, we will be creating new programs and taking new actions that will stand the test of time and will actually become the planning landmarks for the mid 21st century. Next. One of the things that, and again, you're going to hear more about the work done to, number one, study all of the trends that are affecting Montgomery County, to number two, identify the issues that we need and challenges that we have, to do detailed technical studies of our housing market, our retail market, our transportation, we're doing a major housing assessment. We're doing all of that work, and you're going to be hearing about that. But really, what's in some ways the basis for this new general plan is understanding how the county's patterns of growth have evolved and how we need to recognize that and enhance that. We're committed to the Wedges and Corridors plan, but we think it's time for that plan to be modernized and to take into account the actions that have happened over the last 50 years. So again, the image that you see on the far left was this very early wheel and spoke plan where Washington, D.C. was the center of everything, and we had literally one corridor, which was I-270. You see the 1993 plan where we, again, recognized that there was a lot of growth in our inner ring, our inner corridor, our inner ring, but that we really only still focused on one corridor, I-270. What you see on the far right, and we're still working how to sort of graphically describe this gets at it, but doesn't quite achieve it, which is that we have moved away from being, one spoke in a hub with Washington, D.C. at the hub. We have moved from that to being a web of corridors and activity centers. we no longer have just one corridor, the I-270 corridor. We have multiple corridors, particularly the Route 29 corridor going up the east side of the county, the Georgia Avenue corridor, which goes through activity centers like Wheaton and Glenmont. We have some east-west corridors also. The Purple Line, which is being constructed now, is creating another corridor and is enhancing specific activity centers. So that rather than thinking about one corridor and suburban wedges on either side of it, we have to start thinking about how each of those, how to enhance that web of corridors and communities that have evolved over the last 50 years, and how to make the corridors, both the transportation corridors, but also the green corridors that we have preserved over the last 50 years, how to make those corridors as strong as possible, how to strengthen that web, how to make each of those activity centers truly complete communities, and you're going to be hearing that term as well, and how to essentially evolve the county into the 21st century from a greenfields kind of community to an infill community, a community with a strong urban sense in many of its activity centers, but that still appreciates its rural and its suburban areas. Our mantra has been, we want to have the best urban areas in the region, and we want to have the best suburban and the best rural. And that we are a big enough county that we can do all three of those things. And so I think we'll go to the next slide. I think Khalid is, at this point, did you want Carrie to take over, or is this still me?
This is still you.
Okay. So we, as I was saying, we're a maturing county. We're almost built out. We have only about 15% of the land in the county that is unconstrained. Again, depending on how we define constraint. And we need to, again, do that evolution from greenfield to infill. But we also have to challenge some of what we're considering constraints right now. A big part of the area shown here as constrained are single-family neighborhoods that are the bread and butter of Montgomery County. They are stable. They are, they are what probably the county is really most known for, are those great single-family neighborhoods. What we really believe is that as we move into the 21st century, if we're looking at ultimately in the next 30 years, housing potentially up to 200,000 more residents in Montgomery County, those are our projections, that we have to look at not just how we really develop the unconstrained areas, our parking lots to places mantra that we've been working on, but really how we may have to challenge some of what we've believed about the constrained areas and look at, particularly along the edges of single-family neighborhoods that face on very, very busy transportation corridors, as to whether some of those edges need to evolve. Next.
And this is your last.
Okay, thank you. So as you can see, and this is sort of another way of depicting the slide that we just saw. close to 35% of our county is comprised of single-family neighborhoods. Our parks, our agriculture, our open space and recreation take up almost another 40% of the county. And so we are really, we have small opportunities to make changes that are going to allow us to house another 200,000 people at affordable and attainable rates. If we don't challenge some of our existing status quo constraints. We still, again, I want to emphasize, we believe in wedges and corridors. We believe in the idea of a smart growth form of development that's aligned with transportation and transit resources, but we believe we have to take the next step beyond that and think about not just our big corridors where we have heavy rail like WMATA Metro Rail, but think of all of our corridors and how they can become a part of this important web of complete communities in the future. So I think we'll turn it over to Carrie McCarthy next. She is going to really talk about a lot of the work that we've done and the research that has been the basis for our Thrive Montgomery plan and the trends that we've seen. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thanks, Gwen. Next slide, please. I'm just going to give you a short overview of, as Gwen mentioned, some demographic and population trends. We did a study that came out a little over a year ago, looking at about 25-year trends to get a sense of where we've come as we're thinking about where we're going. And then I'll also talk a little bit about the outreach strategy. So this slide provides an overview of population. Montgomery County has more than 1 million people. And while we hear that statistic all the time, it's actually quite unique and uncommon for a county to have a population over 1 million. Only 2% of counties across the country have more than 1 million people. The graph on the right shows the change in the population growth rate over time. And so while we've gained, population's grown by 38% since 1990, the rate of growth has been decreasing over time. So what we have now and going forward are expecting about 5 to 7% growth per decade. And it's interesting thinking about when the original general plan was done in that context and population growth was 50%, 30%, it was much higher, and the mentality at that time was, we have all this growth, we have to constrain it or we're going to be overrun. Where now the mentality is, we're built out, we're not growing that much, but we still need to figure out where to put people within our framework. Next slide, please. The county's also gotten a lot more diverse, and our diversity is really notable. The county has about 55% people of color. And we've also had a rapid increase in the foreign-born population. Foreign-born population has more than doubled from 1990 to over 345,000 people. And its concentration, in 1990, 1 in 5 residents was foreign-born, and today it's 1 in 3. The graph on the right shows the distribution of residents by race and ethnicity. And Montgomery County is more diverse than the nation, which is only 39% people of color, Maryland, which is 49% people of color, and slightly higher than the region, which is 54% people of color. Next slide. We mapped the distribution of the different racial and ethnic groups in this sort of simple way to just show how the diversity of the county has changed at the census tract level. The map on the left shows the landscape in 1990. The map on the right shows the landscape today. Blue are census tracts that are predominantly white, which is defined as more than 70% of the population. Light blue is white majority, 50 to 75% of the population. Green is black majority, 50 to 70% of the population. And then yellow are tracts with no predominant racial or ethnic group. So there's no group that has more than 50% in the population in a particular tract. And you can just see the shift in the diversity changes from 1990 to today, and the growth of the yellow, along the 270 corridor and on the east side of the county, and then the increase in tracts in pink on the right side that are Hispanic majority. Next slide. On the housing side, we, like most of like everyone in the region, we've had below housing production, and that's, as a function of the nature of supply and demand, that's contributed to significant price increases. Next slide. This graph shows Montgomery County trends since 2007. And even prior to 2007, production was much higher, sort of at that 4,000 unit, 3,500 unit per year. So it's really dropped off dramatically and never recovered from the Great Recession. And then the blue and the green show what we need going forward to meet our population needs. Next slide. As I mentioned, increase in housing costs has outpaced income growth. This is adjusting for inflation. Wages have stayed pretty flat since the Great Recession, where housing prices on both the for sale and the renter side have increased dramatically. Next slide. At Montgomery County, when the original plan was done, the region was designed that DC would be the employment hub, and it was all about getting people from the suburbs into the city. That's changed, and a significant percentage of residents live and work in Montgomery County. It's a little funny doing this presentation right now, because I'm sure an even higher percentage of residents live and work in Montgomery County. And this experience with the pandemic is really accelerating trends we've seen already, and it'll be interesting see what stays and what kind of, how we also go back to what the next normal is. Next slide. Outreach, obviously has been a very important part of this plan, and we took a very sophisticated approach to outreach and have really made attempts to target new audiences, embrace modern technology, work with a range of stakeholders. We really wanted to communicate to the public in a way that was easy to understand, and bring people along the process and get them on board with the final recommendations. Next slide. So we kicked off the project last June with a week we called Thrive Week. And we did 5 events in 5 days in 5 different places in the county, which are 5 different council districts. And a lot of the attempts of the outreach has been to meet people where they are. So we've gone to Saturday night concerts, we've gone to farmers markets. We did a series of additional outreach in the fall where we went to the Bethesda, I think it was Taste of Bethesda, Long Branch Days, Burton, there's a big placemaking event in Burtonsville, and really trying to go out into the communities and out into the neighborhood rather than trying to get people to come to a traditional planning meeting on an evening or a location they can't get to. We've interacted in new ways. The picture on the left middle by the green event outreach, that illustrates we've had a graphic recording artist at a lot of our events and have found new ways to capture public input. We've also made innovative uses of online technologies. We had a quiz. It wasn't a statistically significant sampling, but there were questions that were wanted to be provocative to get people's reactions to different issues related to future growth in the county. And then we were able to do some maps around what the responses were. And even, now going forward the next couple months, we're continuing to do some innovative outreach technologies because we have to. We're having pints with a planner, online happy hour next week. And Gwen is doing an Ask Me Anything session later on in May. And I think, as we've heard with even some of our public meetings, as people across the income spectrums, have mobile phones, use technology, that I think this could be helpful in getting us to reach people that, we maybe even would have reached under normal conditions. Next slide. And this slide just provides an overview of our whole strategy, and it's really had three main components. The Excite phase, which was last summer, we're talking about the kickoff, and that was to get input into a lot of the visioning, identification of issues that Khalid will provide a more in-depth analysis on. Then over the fall, winter, we did an educate phase. We did a lot of presentations at specific interest groups. There are several video that are on our website where planners talk about specific issues like how to measure transportation demand and affordable housing. And then we're moving on into engage as we come out with the recommendations for our goals and policies and actions and how to get public buy-in and get public feedback on those. Next slide. And this just illustrates one of the graphic recording artists from the first kickoff event we did in Shady Grove's Farmers Market, and how it has captured people's ideas, and in a pretty creative and innovative format. And I think these graphic recordings have been really well received by a range of people. Next slide. Now I'll turn it over to Khalid to talk about the challenges and issues.
Thanks, Carrie. So, as Carrie mentioned, we have heard from the community, and based on our assessment, we had all kinds of issues that we had gathered. Now, this is a summary of major issues based on community feedback on our assessment. As you can see on the lower right-hand corner, you can access the full issues report with the link here. But
excuse me, Khalid, can anyone who is not muted please mute themselves unless you're speaking? Thank you. Go ahead.
So our current land use, a car-oriented land use pattern is not sustainable. It will increase traffic congestion, create more greenhouse gas emissions, worsen the housing affordability issues, which will push young professionals away from to other locations, creating an economic hurdle to attract better paying employers and increase the inequality issues that we're already facing. We cannot build our way out of traffic congestion. We must shift to transit, walking, and biking as the predominant mode of travel. Our job growth in the past few years has been flat and even dipped into negative categories for a few quarters. And the picture, as Glenn mentioned, has become even more complex and challenging with the coronavirus pandemic, and we'll see how things settle and how we have to deal with that in the next few months. Housing affordability is a huge and complex issue and has negative implications for our economy, our environment, quality of life, our residents, especially those in the lower and middle income ranges. Montgomery County is one of the more affluent places in the country, but this prosperity is not equally shared by all segments of the population. There are huge disparities in access to better paying jobs, access to healthy lifestyle options, quality education, and opportunities for improving one's life based on where people live. This disparity has strong geographic component. Montgomery County is a very diverse place, but this diversity is concentrated in certain locations. Our neighborhoods are very much separated along the lines of income, race, and ethnicity. One of the issues we all know is climate change. It's something that was not part of our previous general plans. It will impact every aspect of life and exacerbate our current challenges as well as creating some new threats. We are facing fast-paced technological changes which will improve our lives, but also create numerous uncertainties and challenges of how we live, work, and grow, and be competitive and resilient. And technology is a double-edged sword. It helps us overcome many hurdles, but it also creates new problems. One of these dualities is social isolation. While social media has created new avenues for people to connect, technology has also created new problems of social isolation, especially for young and the elderly. And also in the name of efficiency, both in the public and private sector, our development pattern is also reinforcing social isolation by making it difficult for people who do not have a car or don't want to or cannot drive for a number of reasons because of age or other things. Next slide, please. So this is what we call our strategic framework early on when we are trying to approach how the general plan should be looked at, what are the issues, how we should approach the general plan. We came up with this, what we call strategic framework. There are 3 components here which we believe impact and cover most other issues. The issues that I talked about, all of them in some way impact or have implications for all these 3 areas. There are the economic health, community equity, and environmental resilience. Those we believe are overarching 3 areas. Some people call them pillars, some people call them our values. We also call them essential outcomes that we have to keep focused on as we are developing this general plan. Next. Here is a relationship between how these 3 outcomes and pillars of the general plan and all the issues that we described that I talked about. And as I mentioned, all the issues are very overlapping. Every issue impacts and has tenets in other issue areas. We try to group them according to not just based on issue areas, but also what they give us some idea of how we should approach these issues and what the possible approaches to solutions might be. So in the background of this oval that shows our diversity of population, diversity of environment, diversity of working areas, as Glenn mentioned, Montgomery County is 3 different places, and even within that, there's a lot of variety. So we are urban, we are suburban, we are rural. So these different blue color rectangles are what we are calling categories or issue areas. Starting at the top, complete communities, which relates to a lot of issues that go to our land use and basically structural framework of how our land use is placed. Connectedness is about social interaction, social capital that is generated by this land use and it's impacted by it. Think of it as complete communities to be the hardware and connectedness is the software, the social impacts and tissue that connects these communities. Then we have diverse economies. That's our goal in order to be competitive. We have safe and efficient travel, affordability, healthy and sustainable environment, diverse and adaptable growth, and culture and design. And those are the categories, the way we are framing all these issues. Next. Here is an overarching, what we call overarching vision for Thrive Montgomery 2050. Montgomery County is a web of complete communities. By 2050, we see Montgomery County as a web of complete communities connected by vibrant corridors. Each complete community is focused around an activity center, which can be a park, a retail center, community facility, and we have housing types and price points located close to workplaces, needed goods and services. These complete communities and other important parts of the county are connected by 2 types of corridors. One of them, as Glenn mentioned, is all these major corridors we have. They are transformed into places, comfortable, safe corridors with multimodal transportation and services. And also we have a web of green corridors all across the county, composed of parks, stream valleys, and trails. On the right-hand side, you see 10 points which illustrate this vision in more detail and what are the major components of this overall county vision. Starting with convenient, most people can live without a car and meet daily needs within a short walk bike ride or a transit trip. We are affordable. Access to affordable housing that aligns with every stage of life is a right for all people, not a luxury. And residents have a variety of choices when selecting their preferred community setting and housing types. We are social. Everyone feels welcome in public places to meet neighbors or spend time with family and friends. Most gathering places and connections to nearby communities reduce social isolation and form stronger community bonds. Montgomery County in 2050 is safe. Pedestrians' lives are prioritized over speed, which increases safety for those who walk, bike, or take public transit. And because of the complete communities, neighbors know each other and look out for each other, increasing safety. We are a very inclusive community. Residents have a say in how their neighborhoods are planned. As planners engage everyone in decision-making about the future of communities, planning policies protect vulnerable communities against gentrification and displacement. We are a flexible county, which means Montgomery County offers diverse places to live, work, play, and interact. And we have flexible regulations and zoning controls which help the county respond to changing demands and adapt quickly to new challenges as they emerge over the next 20 to 30 years. Montgomery County residents enjoy active, healthy lifestyles and feel connected to nature and their neighborhoods, boosting their physical and mental health. We are visioning that every resident lives within a 15-minute walk to a park. Air and water pollution are greatly reduced, and residents have easy access to healthy, locally grown food, quality healthcare facilities, and other services, regardless of where they live. We are resilient in many different ways. We have environmental resiliency, we have resilient infrastructure, we are economically and socially resilient. We lead the natural fight against climate change through our compact land use pattern and the expansion of our natural areas, parks, and transit services. And we invest in green policies and technologies. We are competitive. The county attracts large companies, small businesses, and high quality education institutions, creating a culture of innovation and learning that leads to shared prosperity for all. Its forward-looking economy is strong and competitive with a variety of stable and well-paying jobs. And the county is an inspiring place. A strong emphasis on design, arts, and cultural diversity makes our communities inspiring, connected, and fun, attracting people from across the region, supporting economic development. Our parks, trails, and public spaces are a focal point of community gathering and allow for a variety of experiences. Next slide, please. And here is a summary of what are major concepts and goals that we are looking at going forward that will bring the county to where we want it to be and be a thriving place in 30 years. Again, as we said, we have to have a transit system where majority of the daily trips are by public transit, walking or bicycling. We have a resilient economy, resilient environment, social network, and resilient infrastructure. And taking advantage of the growth in the next few decades, and especially, as Glenn mentioned, we have to switch to infill and redevelopment, green places in green areas and landscaping and in natural areas in places where none existed before. And the best example of that is transformation of White Flint, where it was a mostly all concrete paved place, and now it has a lot more green and natural areas and tree canopy. We need innovative growth management policies for a mature and built-out county. Our people-oriented communities where people can work, play, shop, earn, and enjoy public amenities and services within walking distance. Most of the new growth, most new housing is near transit, and affordable housing and convenient living for all stages of life. We want to transform our major roadways into attractive boulevards where we have missing middle housing and local retail. We have, let me just innovative economy supported by public sector and private and nonprofit employers in multiple industries. We have a collection of great downtown cities, small towns, urban and suburban neighborhoods, and rural villages, each with their own identity. We have a land use and development pattern which gives us equitable health outcomes regardless of where people live. And affordable housing is indistinguishable from market rate housing. And we have communities with vibrant public places that promote communication and social interaction among residents. Next slide, please. So here is where I want to hand it over to Tanya to talk about how general plans are implemented and what's next for us. Tanya?
Great, thank you. Happy to join. I'm also a current Lambda Alpha member, so excited that we're able to share our work with you today. I'm just going to wrap it up really quickly so we have some time for Q&A. You know, the effectiveness ultimately of the general plan will be in its implementation. And so we will have a chapter to talk about how to implement the general plan through a number of tools. Obviously, our future land use planning that our department will be undertaking, but also other plans, infrastructure, facilities plans by our partner agencies will be critical. Related to that is using a capital budget process to actually implement projects, publicly funded projects that will help to make the community, the complete community's vision a reality. There are other changes that are anticipated and that we will be speaking to when we bring forth some draft actions, potential changes to zoning regulations, to other types of regulations and ordinances. But we also want to make sure that we use the guidance from the general plan to inform our regulatory review processes for development proposals. We also want to identify the responsible agencies for implementing the actions in the general plan and also include a prioritization so that we know which ones to focus on the short term, medium term, and long term. Next slide. And so in terms of the project timeline, as we've already discussed, we shared the draft vision and goals with the planning board. The next step is to bring forward some draft policies and actions to relate to the goals and the vision that you all have been seeing today. And then ultimately in September, we will bring forward to the planning board and to the community a working draft plan. And at that point, we will start a very robust public review process, ultimately to submit a plan to the county council by next spring, by April of next year, upon which they will start their own review process. And we can get the project completed next year. With that, we are happy to take any questions.
Okay. As I had mentioned at the beginning, if people are able to put any of their questions into chat, that would be great. Everyone knows how to get there. Just at the bottom of your screen, there's a little box that says chat. I don't see any questions yet. Okay, well that was a very thorough presentation. Perhaps there are no questions. Unless...
I have a question, but I can't type fast enough.
Okay, please.
Okay, I was going to say that I really liked your point saying that your goal is to achieve complete communities where you have a whole range of services and housing and employment in communities, and that there are many interconnected with using you know, new transportation modes of making these into boulevards, etc. But it still seems to me that in the Washington area is sort of unique in that the federal government is still a major employer. And I just wondered to what extent you're coordinating with other, you know, federal agencies or the master plans for where different agencies may be located in the future so that you can have some employment closer to where people reside in Montgomery County. In other words, to achieve your goal of complete communities.
Yeah, I can respond to that. We are very fortunate to have an active technical advisory committee, and it does include some representatives from some of our major federal campuses. We stay in very close coordination with all of our federal campuses. One of the struggles that we face, and I'm sure everyone in the Washington area faces, is that our federal campuses have become more closed in rather than open. And so while we are thrilled with the idea of providing employment, we'd love to come up with ways to sort of better integrate the actual campuses into our complete communities. We know that may be unrealistic at this moment in our history, but again, we're looking forward, 30, 40, 50 years, and we hope that our large campuses that we have, federal campuses, are not always going to remain the fenced, gated areas that they are today. They certainly do provide important jobs, but what we're seeing in the county, and what we're hoping, is that we can work on promoting a lot of our private sector jobs, not just our federal, state, and local government jobs.
So we do have a question from Jennifer Russell that says, has there been much reaction from the county council yet?
We really haven't presented this to the county council yet. We are still getting feedback from our planning board. When we've talked to the council during some briefings that we've done, because we have been trying to brief them on each step of the process as well, I think the general reactions have been quite positive.
Great. A compliment. Rachel Newhouse says, nicely done. Thank you for the presentation. Another question, what are examples in the county that best exemplify the goals outlined in the presentation?
I can start on this, but I'd encourage Carrie, Khalid, or Tanya to also speak up. We are very pleased with both of our major urban centers, Silver Spring and Bethesda. In both of those communities, you can really experience what we call 10-minute living. You can not only walk to jobs, to housing, to shops, to entertainment, but you also have the ability in a very short distance to get to healthcare, to schools. In Bethesda, it's amazing. People who live in Bethesda can walk to elementary schools, can walk to high schools. And we'd like to promote that even more, particularly in working with Montgomery County Public Schools to encourage them to do some innovative school design so that we can see more school facilities in our activity areas. We're working hard to make Wheaton another one of those kinds of areas that is a complete community. We're moving our offices from Silver Spring into downtown Wheaton, and that, along with our Parks Department and some other county agencies, we're going to be adding about 700 employees in downtown Wheaton, so that there have been some new housing developments, but we'll also have new jobs. We've also in Wheaton just created a new rec center and library. All of these things are in walking distance. The goal, again, is this idea of a complete community where you can access many of the services and the things we all need to live happily in a short 10 to 15 minute walk. I don't know if Carrie or Khalid or Tanya have any additional responses.
I was just going to add really briefly that I believe it's the Cabin John Shopping Center project, Glenn, is an example of primarily a commercial, basically a shopping center, a strip shopping center that is being, part of it is being redeveloped and revitalized, and there's going to be a whole bunch of housing that's going to be added next to the retail. And that's an example of a more kind of traditional suburban community that's also right next door to a park as well. So I think the message is that complete communities is not just for urban areas, it's for other types of communities as well.
Tanya stole the example I was going to refer to. But yeah, like we envision complete communities. There's not a one size fits all approach, and they'll be at different scales in different parts of the county. And a school or community facility, or some other facility might be an anchor rather than a major retail district in certain villages.
This is Khalid. One of my favorite examples of complete communities in the county is the town of Kensington. It's somewhere between, not entirely urban, not entirely rural, but it has almost every feature of the complete communities that we are envisioning. It has historic areas, it has a town hall, it has grocery store, retail. It even had a lumber store, but that's gone now. Pharmacy, workplace. But it also exemplifies the challenges that we have because it's kind of divided by two major highways that come and join together, University Boulevard and Connecticut Avenue. And that's exactly the challenge about how we tame these places and convert these corridors into more walkable places. In the town of Kensington, in complete communities, you can have your car repaired, go to dine, and do everything there. Another example would be that it's not a complete community, but it has a potential, for example, the small neighborhood on Grub Road around the shopping center there with that restaurant, Parkway Deli, and a little bit of retail. It's close to a school, it's nearby a park. And again, in the rural area, a great potential for the complete community could be the town of Damascus. So there are places, as Carrie mentioned, there will be different scales, different types, very fixed to their context and locality. But these are some of the places that we think could be examples and develop into better, more complete communities.
And I just want to add, Rachel Newhouse is a plant because she works for our Parks Department. And they've been doing a great job. Rachel's been on this project thinking about how to incorporate parks into complete communities and across the county. And then also I saw she's on the line. Anina Morrison did our office market study in 2015 and also worked on the retail study we did in 2017. And those studies, among others, were very informative in our background research as we developed high-level thoughts about the project.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Emily Vias has asked, will there be any changes proposed to areas that are very resistant to change, such as Friendship Heights and Chevy Chase?
I think that this plan will have some recommendations that will be controversial and that will propose changes to neighborhoods that may not be entirely on board. When we talk about complete communities, it's really not just about bringing housing to our existing sort of activity centers to make those activity centers more complete. It's also about bringing other services to areas that are primarily single-family residential to make those single-family residential neighborhoods more complete. We know that there may be some pushback and some concerns about adding some mix of uses in single-family neighborhoods, about the creation of more density along corridors that abut single-family neighborhoods. We expect that there will be concerns that will be expressed, but to move into the 21st century in order to accommodate 200,000 more people, as I said at the outset, we are going to have to reevaluate sort of how we do business as usual. We are going to have to think about doing things differently than business as usual. We're going to have to reevaluate what we consider constrained land. really take a fresh look, because we cannot just continue with the exact patterns that we have today.
Thank you, Gwen. Anyone else either want to chat or say a question? Actually, I think we're out of time. I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much to the park and planning staff. John, do you want to say anything else?
Yes, I did. I want to thank Gwen, Tanya, Carrie, and Khalid for an excellent presentation of a really great, wonderful plan for Montgomery County, which is, of course, is where I live. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we do anticipate that the May luncheon will also be virtual. And that is scheduled for May 29th, which is the Friday after Memorial Day. And Beverly Swaim Staley is scheduled to speak on Union Station, although, as I said before, we haven't confirmed that she's willing to do it virtually. So we will do that, and I'm sure Lisa will be sending out a notice and fairly soon. Does that work for you, Lisa?
Perfect. Thank you so much, John.
Yeah.
So we'd like to try something where we actually have an opportunity to speak to each other in smaller groups. I learned this recently, and it works really well. So anyone who wants to stay and be placed in a room, a breakout room, please do, and you can talk among yourselves. We're going to do it for about 15 minutes, and then we may do a second one if we have enough people. So if you want to hold on for a second, I'm going to try and set up these rooms, and you should automatically be placed in a room with random people who you may or may not know.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. All right, here comes our breakouts. Okay. Does everybody want to unmute in this breakout room so we can talk to each other? I see John Fondersmith, Emily Vias, Avery, Steve Rodiger, Trudy.
Hello. Sorry, I missed the beginning of the presentation.
Can anybody else?
I can't hear anyone. I'm talking, but
Can people unmute themselves? Can you hear me, Trudy?
I can hear you fine.
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay.
How's your family with all this isolation?
Yeah, it's nice to see people.
Yeah. Are the girls at home, or do they have their own place yet? I know.
Oh yeah, they're almost 30. So
Okay.
one's in Texas and one's here
Mm-hmm.
in DC. So they're doing fine. It's hard. It's hard for everyone this time.
Yeah. Are you out? Are you able to get out and walk? I can't remember where you live in.
I live not too far from Brookside Gardens, and that's been a real blessing.
Oh, so like Aspen Hill kind of area?
Glenmont, near the metro.
Yeah, I live in a very single family development, and it's been really great meeting neighbors and stuff. And I didn't know how well that worked down in Bethesda and the more urban areas.
Yeah, I actually went and did like a little memo to everybody, put it on their mailbox, all the people on our very long street. And then so we at least have each other's emails and different things. I have a little dog that everybody knows. So I've met some people that way.
Now, my neighbor across the street and I did a soup exchange because we've both been isolated. We figure we're okay. And
Yeah.
if you make a big crock pot and there's only two of you, you kind of get tired of it. So if you switch out, it's something new.
Okay. I'm going to go check and see if anyone else is able to do this better.
Okay.
I'll talk to you when we go back.
Okay.
Hi, Lisa.
There, you're back. But we only have us. So I guess it wasn't the best. Well, we'll wait.
No, it was fun. We had a good time.
It can be great. Oh, there's John, came back from the Caribbean.
Yep. Well, I'm still there, actually.
Very beautiful. Looks like a jigsaw puzzle. My mind is on jigsaw puzzles.
So is it just the three of us left?
I think so, unless anyone else is coming back.
Because I clicked on return to main session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's who we are. So I don't know about Emily and Jeff and Rachel. They were having a good conversation. Oh, it's in 8 seconds. They should be coming back to us.
Ah.
So let's see if that works. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, I'm really pleased at how this went. I was very apprehensive, even though as I said, I participated in a lot of these calls, but our IT department has handled everything. So I'm just so glad it went as well as it did, and because we're definitely going to have another one in May, and maybe even beyond.
Okay. Well, I think it went pretty well. That was great that they could do the presentation. It was very informative. At one point, I think we had like 39 people. So it was a good turnout considering the first time, and
I thought it was terrific. People have to be conscious of muting though when they're, so that's, you could say it, but people forget to do it. But other than that, I thought it was seamless.
good.
Breakout room was pretty good. That worked. That was a good idea.
Yeah, I think we'll make that more, we'll give people more warning and let them know exactly how that will work. And now we have a testimonial from how it worked this time, so we can say Jeff liked it. And
well, yeah, it was so easy, even a caveman could do it.
I just didn't know how Jeff got from his office to an island that quickly. We were really
I know, John is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Looks like
I haven't figured that out yet, how to do that.
It's pretty easy once you figure it out.
Okay, thank you very much.
all right, thanks
all
everyone.
right.
Bye-bye.
See y'all.
Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks so much, Lisa.
Bye-bye.